We're just letting everybody in.
Hi everyone, welcome.
Okay, we're recording the meeting just for we'll record it and we will be able to share it for everybody who has registered and not able to attend. And we'll get started, I think. Rachel, if you're able to share your screen. Can we ask if everybody can keep themselves muted throughout, because we're expecting we've crossed the threshold of 100 people, so it's a busy room, so if everybody can stay muted, that would be great. And we will get started. So welcome everybody. Zoom is happy now, Rachel. Welcome everybody. My name is Sarah Edmonds. I'm one of the co-directors of the National Retrofit Hub alongside Rachel Owens.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Owens, Sarah's co-director here at the NRH.
And we're very happy to welcome you to our third open meeting. And it comes at a moment of the Hub's existence of crossing the 2-year threshold. So we have a lot to be thankful for. So quick agenda, we'll do quick introductions and talk a little bit about the impact that we've had to date. We're going to tell you and remind you what we did last time in our last open meeting, a little bit of an overview of our work to date, of our government engagement, and how you can get involved. Then we're going to have a little workshop session with some breakout rooms, and you are going to be the authors of the breakout rooms, but more on what that is later. And then we'll talk a little bit about the opportunities for anybody who is interested in becoming a partner or a sponsor. So yes. So what seems like a long time ago in one way, but also like 2 seconds ago, the Hub was established to do these 3 things: to collaborate, to empower, and to facilitate everybody who's active in the retrofit sector or space, regardless of the type of work, to try and bring together people to enable the visibility of all the great work that's been happening in retrofit, but it has been a little bit in silos because of the lack of, say, a national policy for a retrofit strategy. What we have, though, sort of morphed into over the last 2 years is that we're still very much committed to the convening, but we're now moving more into the space of evidencing and acting. And so what that really means is we still really believe in the importance of bringing people together, of providing a platform for people to be able to share their knowledge, their experience, for us to be able to showcase that work, that immense amount of labour that's happening across the retrofit space. But we also want to be able to evidence that. So we've been working hard collectively and collaboratively with our network to generate outputs, which we'll show you a little bit later on, and to really turn some of that evidence into action. So hopefully we'll give you an overview of that as the session runs on. So how are we enabling this change? Well, we are... Oh, I'm getting some feedback. Yeah, great. Thank you. So we do these things. We convene stakeholders to tackle barriers, both known and unknown sometimes. We advance research to address critical gaps, provide independent insights and tools. I can't stress how important it is that we try to remain independent and objective, so that the evidence that we're able to pull forward is done so in an unbiased way. We connect and amplify the sector. We do our best to ensure that efforts are coordinated. And we, as you'll see a little bit later on, we're here to support any government in the delivery of activities and policies that can enable this change. And we do that with the help of our funders. So we were started with a grant from Innovate UK, and we have subsequently had some core funding from the MCS Foundation and our partners Impact on Urban Health. But we also have a growing network of partners and sponsors, some, hopefully all, listed here, but it's ever changing and growing. So if you are one of our partners and sponsors and you're not here, that's soon to be remedied. So we'll talk about that towards the end of the session, about becoming a partner and a sponsor. A little bit about what our activity has enabled and how we've grown as a network over the last 2 years. We have over 700 participants in our working groups, and there are over 3,500 of you experts in our network. We, in the last 3 months, have seen over 16,000 visits to our website. All of these are numbers that I'm not that familiar with, but particularly when it comes to our open rate, and when I say I'm not familiar, I'm obviously familiar with our numbers, but what that means is something that we're learning more and more about. And so a 68% open rate on your newsletter, we hear that's pretty good. So we're very, very glad that we're obviously sharing the stuff that you all want to hear about. And so it's also a moment to thank you for sending things to us in order to allow us to share that. So we do see ourselves as that feedback loop between all of you and each other, and all of you and other groups within the sector. Yeah, so our working groups, to date, there have been 11 outputs since the start of 2024, and they have had over 23,000 views or downloads in that time, with more than 500 people. I think we've actually upped those numbers on the previous slide and maybe haven't quite caught up with ourselves to update it on this slide, but there's a lot of people who are engaging with that activity in the working groups. And we're going to talk today about the shape of the working groups to come, because there's been a particular shape to date, and now we're recognizing there's a moment of change coming, which is really exciting. So we're looking forward to sharing that with you. So Rachel, over to you.
Yeah, so last time we had a really big session looking at our sort of objectives Miro board. You're not meant to read any of this, obviously, but each of the sort of green lozenges represented a different working group. And then within those, we had different objectives that the working groups had identified and routes that they were planning to use to work towards those objectives, and then outputs that were planned from each of the working groups. So what we wanted to do here was really seek your feedback, understand who else was doing good work in some of these spaces, where are the overlaps, where are the places for collaboration, what sort of outputs did you want to see, for example. And that's really shaped the way that our last year went, and how we sort of prioritize different outputs from each of those groups, and was a big help to the conversations that we have with our working group chairs and our advisory panel. Along the bottom, we'd also started to introduce this idea of cross-cutting themes. So this is where there is a specific theme, and we'll talk a bit more about this, that touches on maybe many aspects of different working groups. It might be 3 or 4 working groups, it might be all of them, but we know that the theme requires something from each different sort of stakeholder group that might be involved. And today's really going to be a much deeper exploration of those cross-cutting themes, because I think, as one of our board members, Russell, puts it, these are sort of the infrastructure that's going to enable retrofit to be scaled in a way that's really good quality, positive, and meets social justice outcomes. So off the back of all of that, we released a series of outputs last year. We kicked off with the qualifications and training map, which was led by Working Group 3, giving you a whole picture of all of the different qualifications and training that are out there in the retrofit space. They also followed up with a checklist that was specifically targeted at sort of combined and local authorities to help them develop their own skills task force. Then we had some outputs from Working Group 1. We were looking at digital building logbooks, and their potential to play a really impactful role in scaling up retrofit. We released a bit of an explainer on those, because they're probably quite a new concept to many people, and our sort of vision for how they could be expanded to incentivize and enable retrofit. That's also when we started some of our EPC reform work. We've been engaging with many of you since May on what was needed from EPC reform to enable retrofit at scale. And we released our sort of first literature review and library of all of the existing research and documents that we knew about on EPC reform, and that was really the basis for that project. In July, we'd had lots of conversations in our Working Group 5 about how local authorities could be supported, and what we didn't want to do is jump in and say, oh, we could support some local authorities, because we knew that there were already people doing great work in that space, and there were lots of sort of opportunities for local authorities to potentially engage with existing services that were on offer. So this is a bit of a, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and specifically on that one, we had the support of one of our co-creators for that. So though we recognise a lot of this activity comes out of the support in the working groups, we also have our co-creators initiative, which we can talk a little bit about later on, but that one was supported by Paul.
Oh yeah, that's such a good point, Zoe. And that's another way to get involved. If you are maybe already part of a working group, but you want to get involved more, or maybe your working group isn't your style and you maybe prefer to work a little bit more solo or in a much smaller group, that co-creators initiative is a great way to sort of help us get some really impactful resources out there. That was sort of part of the build up though towards our State of the Nation review that we launched last year, which was really looking at what scale are we currently delivering retrofit to, and how are the different delivery mechanisms working? Where are they working well and where are they working badly? And what we really want to do there is to understand, okay, how many homes are being retrofit right now? Where do we need to get to? And what does that gap look like? And that's been absolutely pivotal in sort of defining a lot of our work that came afterwards. In September, we released an output that was a culmination of maybe a year's worth of discussions, debates, synthesizing and trying to form consensus on how archetyping could best be used to support retrofit at scale. We produced a best practice methodology for those that are using archetyping. And we also have a library of existing archetype guides. So have a look at that, check it out on the website. And if you're aware of anyone who's done archetyping that's readily available on the website online and you'd like that included in the website, then do get in touch. And then in November, we launched with Working Group 2 our products and solutions showcase library. That's a case study library that's going to include different solutions to retrofitting. There's a form that's available for that right now. So if you know of a product, a solution, or an innovation even in the retrofit space that you'd like to showcase through that sort of peer-reviewed case study library, then please do fill in that form. We're about to review the first batch with our review panel and then start releasing them onto the website. And then we also released our collective vision for EPC reform, which helped really shape our response to that consultation that was led by all of you. And now we're just going to talk about, we're doing some funded projects within the hub, and we wanted to give you a bit of an overview of what they look like. So first up, we've been, as Sarah mentioned, working with impact on urban health. And back in January, we released a paper on raising standards in the private rental sector. This was led by Cara Holmes, who's on the call, our technical program manager, who's on secondment from Citizens Advice. And we were looking here at what are the different sort of regulations, but also supporting infrastructure that's needed to improve the private rental sector in terms of performance, energy efficiency, and health and carbon emissions. So that's a really comprehensive report looking at each of the different sort of criteria that are needed and different ways that intervention could happen. Following that release, the government then launched a consultation on improving energy performance of private rented homes. That's looking at the minimum energy efficiency standards. And within that, they're looking at new timelines for implementation, new metrics and targets for private rental homes, and new scope, different exemptions and different cost caps. So we're going to be doing some work here looking at whether or not those proposals for MEES will really deliver the health, fuel poverty and comfort outcomes needed for renters. And there'll be a webinar on that just a week and a bit before the deadline. So please do sign up to the newsletter to receive a link to that. If you're planning to respond, it could be helpful sort of finalising or helping you draft your responses to that consultation. Another funded project that we're working on is Retro Net Zero. This one is being led by the BRE, and we've got a great host of project partners on this one: Constructing Excellence, the Construction Products Association, National Energy Foundation, and Planet Mark. So this is looking at the fact that the regulatory environment for innovation in the net zero retrofit space is quite challenging. We know that there are sometimes unclear requirements and a lack of pathways for innovators. Regulation, as you can expect, might evolve more slowly than innovation does. And so there might not always be the regulation there to cover all of the innovation that's happening. We know that approvals and testing can be costly. And we're also looking at this idea of regulatory science. I'm going to describe what that means, but we think that the capability to do that at the minute is quite fragmented. So our solution is really utilizing a network of networks. And many of us have existing networks that we want to bring together to draw in that regulatory science expertise, but also to sort of understand the barriers that all of these innovators are facing and create a critical mass for where we see the problems occurring. Yeah, so as I mentioned, we're looking at regulatory science. So that's essentially the science, the analysis, the data that's needed in order to either change regulations and make the evidence to make that change, or to allow people to navigate existing regulations. So that might be drawing together test evidence that a product works in a certain way so that it can conform with regulation. It might be about developing tools to meet standards, developing new pathways, really looking at the sort of infrastructure that goes behind the regulation that supports innovation to come through. So there are 3 current projects ongoing. One is a digital innovation pathways route map. That's a project that's being led by the BRE, and it extends work that Energy Systems Catapult did with Innovate UK funding. We're also looking at a capacity map for where there are existing universities, test centres, living labs, pilot projects that can pull together that regulatory science, like where can you get your innovation tested and trialed. And then we at the NRH are leading on a project which is called the co-benefits of retrofit. So that's looking at how regulation could support and incentivize innovative products that alongside net zero also deliver different health benefits. So how might you sort of incentivize a product that can do more than just the sort of core benefit potentially targeted, and where does regulation come in that picture? And back over to you then, Sarah.
Yeah, it feels like a natural segue from
Oh, sorry, that was, there we go.
It feels like a natural segue to have talked about the co-benefits of retrofit from that perspective of innovation and regulatory science to this project. So measuring outcomes and impact evaluation is a project that has emerged following, as Rachel mentioned earlier, our State of the Nation report. The State of the Nation review really revealed a number of challenge themes, and further distillation of those challenge themes led us to lean into this one. So this essentially is identifying the fact that retrofit needs to really have a much broader definition in order to make the most of what have historically been maybe understood as co-benefits, but ultimately are core benefits of retrofit. Now, in current schemes, often there are outcomes that are targeted but not necessarily measured, and sometimes they are reported but also not measured. So what we really want to try and understand is, what is that state right now? What are we measuring? What determines success? Are we just targeting it, or are we actually measuring it? And we also want to understand what innovations are happening right now. So we have been working, we have been fortunate enough to be part of other kind of projects and research projects examining these questions that we're also going to draw through. So in terms of understanding innovation at the moment, we will be looking at and speaking with our colleagues who are active in this space in HACT, the Social Value Portal, work that's happened in ECCI, Edinburgh Climate Change Institute, all of whom who are looking at these broader definitions of how we actually measure to deliver on better outcomes in retrofit programs. We are taking what's commonly understood as the 3 horizons approach to this, and that essentially is, as I've already sort of explained, what's the current dominant model? What are the innovations that are coming through? And then also pausing for a moment to think, what is the future visioning of this situation? So we will have different stakeholder engagement workshops. There'll be opportunities to get involved in that. And we are fortunate to have partners Arup, Trustmark and Impact on Urban Health in this project. So yes, that's up and running now. And if there are things that you understand that are happening out there, I think we do have the opportunity to fill in a form on our website, but if not, we can drop a link in the chat or circulate it afterwards about innovative models for measuring impacts. And it doesn't just have to be in the built environment, it can be beyond the built environment. We're doing a big deep dive literature review. We've already got something like 26 submissions that we're working our way through. And we're always cognizant of activity and work that's already happening in the space so that we're not wasting energy and duplicating efforts. Yeah. And then this project, this is a project called Retrofit Connect. We are working on this with a range of partners, but Civic Square are the lead partner for this project. And essentially this is taking a street demonstrator approach to examining other models of retrofit. So we know that community and civic society groups are already engaging in retrofit. We know that from all of the sort of industry research that a big piece of the puzzle that's not working is trust. Trust is really a problem piece that arises again and again. Who to trust, what to trust, who to turn to, where should you get your information, who should you be working with? All of those things are a little bit, yes, wobbly, it's fair to say. But with the groups who are already out there doing some of this real heavy lifting, they're often under-resourced and under-supported. And we know that the evidence points to needing to provide sort of support systems for these models of delivery. So we're fortunate enough to be working with 3 different street demonstrator projects, 2 in Birmingham and 1 in Bristol. So that's with Civic Square, with Retrofit Balsall Heath, and with We Can Make in Bristol. Simultaneously, we'll be working with a cohort of emergent community and civic society groups who are coming through earlier on their retrofit journey. And our role in the NRH is to essentially act like a sponge to understand what is going on for these street demonstrators who are really being these innovators on the front foot, and what is it that we can help through our network. Because as we said earlier on, there's like 3,500 experts in our network. So how can we ensure that all of that expertise and knowledge is getting to the places that it needs to get to? So we'll be working to create resources, sort of in 4 buckets as we've described them. So social infrastructure, organizational infrastructure, technical infrastructure, financial infrastructure. So what are the things that the different street organizations need support with, and how does that then in turn deliver impactful outcomes at the end of that? We're operating in our action research manner, which means in the open. So there'll be opportunities throughout the next 12 months to check in with the progress of that work. There's going to be a webinar that we can share a little bit more about the story. There are going to be moments of knowledge exchange and celebration happening through the year. Up and down the country, so we will be able to share that with you more, and that will also be at some of our existing opportunities to do events that you'll hear a little bit more about later on. So we also wanted to talk a little bit about our engagement with government that has been really intensifying over recent months. So earlier in January, we had the good fortune to co-host the Undersecretary for State and Minister for Consumers, Miata Fahnbulleh, and we had that event in collaboration with the New Economics Foundation. Collaboratively, we hosted the minister. We prepared a report which is available on our website in advance of that, which was really trying to distill our key messages that we had developed with our board, with our advisory panel, and with our network. And through those key messages, we also were able to sort of draw out the proposals and the opportunities for government as we saw them. I want to guess that the next slide has a little bit more detail about that, but I'm not sure. Rachel, can you move on to the next slide?
Yep.
Yes, it does. Okay. So what the key messages were that we were drawing out from that was that retrofit is the lever for economic growth and prosperity. Spend on retrofit should deliver better value. And what we mean by that is not only the investment that goes into the retrofit schemes, but there's also huge amounts of money that goes into retrofit research or innovation development. And there's an incredible amount of knowledge out there. And what we believe is that it can deliver better value if we can hold that together a little bit more so that we're conscious of what's happening and we're able to showcase the good activity and work that's happening. We know that the low carbon heat transition must be considered holistically. That's really, really important. We're not talking about any kind of one solution. We are talking about an agnostic approach that considers each piece of the system collectively. And we know that government must work together with existing retrofit organisations to help implement and deliver a national retrofit strategy. So what we have done here on this slide is really distill down. I always have a copy of this report very close to hand, but there's quite a lot of information in there. And what we've wanted to do is really distill that down. So and bear in mind as well that this was developed with the government as the audience in mind. So these are three action areas that we were proposing that there's opportunity for the government to really step into. This is not exhaustive. There are others as well that you'll see later on. So one of those is reframing co-benefits as core benefits, which I've touched on already. But essentially, when you boil it down to it, we've got to measure what matters and we've got to design the programs for delivery around those. In terms of designing policy to build capacity, skill and trust in the sector, we know, all of you will know this, but we need long-term surety, and that must be underpinned by a clear, motivational and legible QA, quality assurance framework. And we also encourage everybody to recognise the potential of place-based and community-driven approaches. So it's really important that we tackle procurement to deliver genuine social value and enable community wealth building opportunities. And the good news for all of you is that we will get into the detail of that in the workshop session. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to talk a little bit about a few events that we have been part of over the last few months and also some that are coming up. So many of you joined us at Future Build. We had a great day on the main stage, collaborating with a series of our wonderful partners and people who are doing great things in the space. Two excellent action shots here of Sarah. But yeah, it was a
Can we
really well
just note
attended.
that we didn't necessarily have a huge photo pile to pull from, not that it was the
We just
Sarah
liked
show.
these ones the best. No. But yeah, it was a really great session covering a variety of topics from EPCs to finance to community-led retrofit to sort of using systems thinking. We always get such great interaction at Future Builds. So that was really positive to sort of kick off Q2 for the year. We are also partnering with the Building Centre on their Retrofit 25 exhibition. Some of you may have been to their previous retrofit exhibitions, Retrofit 23 and Retrofit 24. This year, yeah, we wanted to team up, and the theme of the exhibition is What's Stopping Us? We're looking at a series of essentially showcasing solutions over a series of themes because there are already so many people doing excellent work in the space. We wanted to sort of uncover them and allow people to see solutions that are already out there. There's an exhibition that you can visit at the Building Centre in London for free with lots of those different solutions showcased. And also there will be a series of events as part of that, some of them in person and some of them online, tackling each of those sort of different themes. So we've got communities, we've got one on hearts and minds, thinking about that mindset shift. We've got one on carbon and materials, another one innovation, one on finance, one on ethics, and then one sort of really bringing it all together and looking at the whole value of the highly performing homes and buildings, which is really crucial to a lot of the messages that we have around making sure that we are targeting all of the benefits of retrofit. So yeah, please do scan the QR code and register for those events. They're all free to attend, and we'd love to see you there. And then in terms of conferences that we've got coming up for the year, we'll be at UK Construction Week for the whole day on the 8th of May. We're hosting a series of sessions on the Housing Action Hub. So please do come along for that. That should be really excellent. We're also at the Installer Show. We're hosting panels on the 25th of June. So that will be in Birmingham at the NEC. Please do come and visit us. And then we're back in London for Elemental London in November, and we'll be hosting panels on that day as well. Haven't quite got those lined up yet. But yeah, there should be a good series of events there for you to join us at and come and say hi. All of the events that we do are on our website, so you can scan that QR code or go to the events page on the website and you'll see our webinars, bits and pieces that Sarah and I are talking about, where our board members might be showing up. So yeah, lots of opportunities there to either come and say hello or to hear different speakers talk. So now, hopefully Ben's going to share in the link in the chat, a link to a Miro board. Sarah and I are going to talk you through it. Then we're going to have a quick poll, and then we'll go into some breakout rooms and have some proper discussion. So I'm going to share my Miro screen, and we can let you know what the next sort of half an hour, 35 minutes of the session is going to look like.
Yeah.
So when you go into the Miro, you'll see sort of similar to layout to last time, but as you can see here, we've shifted the focus from the working groups towards the cross-cutting themes. So along the top here, we've showcased and given you a bit of a flavour for the outputs that have already been released by each different working group. So you can sort of see what the groups have sort of done in the last year along the top there, just as a bit of a reference point. And then what we've done is looked at a series of questions that have been coming up over the last sort of 3-4 months. We've held board meetings, we've held 2 advisory panel meetings and an all chairs meeting to really discuss and understand what the questions out there are that the NRH could play a role in tackling in order to achieve all of the benefits of retrofit. So I don't know, Sarah, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to add to say that this wasn't a case of sort of like sweeping the previous Miro off the table and starting from scratch.
No.
Everything is cumulative and builds upon what we had been discussing to that point. So as Rachel mentioned earlier on at the start of the session, when we said what did we do with you all last time, when we started to introduce this notion of cross-cutting themes, actually, I think some of the bits are being moved around. If you can,
my locking was very unsuccessful earlier,
we're
wasn't
just
it?
going to lock that down. It's really easy in Miro to accidentally move or delete things based on like whether you're on a laptop or a PC. So just bear with us while we lock that in. And you can, of course, when it comes to it, we'll get to adding sticky notes and everybody can interact with this. We definitely do want to have your feedback on it. But this builds on everything that we've been looking at so far. And yes, the at the top of the page, you'll see there's a color code. And as we were developing our kind of key messages, the next question was, well, if the key messages are X, what should retrofit as an idea, as a movement be delivering? So we've got these different color coded statements across the top around, say, let's pick out, workforce growth and skills is obviously important. So there's some pink boxes further down on the Miro board that the question within that really relates to workforce and skills, let's say. And what we've tried to do is, Rachel, should we go through what the names of the cross-cutting themes are for everybody? Yeah, so we've got EPCs and minimum energy efficiency standards. Now, taking this for a moment, EPCs and minimum energy efficiency standards, this absolutely does relate across the groups because, for example, in working group 1, which looks at a lot at data, it's obvious that EPCs and MEs are going to be reliant on quality data that's interoperable, and then what do we do with that data? And some of our work so far on logbooks, digital building logbooks, also is really important there. But quality assurance also shows up in working group 1, and that also shows up across the piece in working group 2. It shows up in working group 3. So hence EPCCs really are EPCCs. EPCs and MEs definitely shows up all across the piece. And so we've examined that in the other cross-cutting theme definitions as well. I don't know, do you want to take it on from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So within each of the themes, we've got different questions that have come up that we think are linked into them. We've already done this work on the private rental sector, and the work we're doing in the me space we want to build from that. Another cross-cutting theme is on community retrofit. As Sarah mentioned, we've already got the Retrofit Connect project, but we think that this is a really big space to be potentially intervening in. As Sarah mentioned, there are massive crossovers between the quality assurance part of this puzzle, which is really a working group 1 led topic, and also that community retrofit and building trust. We've got some questions within that community retrofit space on how community organizations.
Oh,
someone's just made a frame in front of it. This is new.
If we can just make a little request to not be in the Miro just for a minute while we're explaining it, and then we can hopefully.
I'm hoping that that's just a frame over the top of the. I don't know how someone's managed to do this. I
don't know either.
Oh. This is really interesting. Ah, okay.
Oh,
Yeah, it's,
there it is.
I think, okay. Someone's moved the frame to the front. Yeah. So please do try and not
We
unlock
appreciate
anything
your
on the board.
enthusiasm.
Yes.
Just hold on.
Yes, exactly. Let's try locking that again. Um,
So
there
as
we
Richard
go.
was saying, we've got some questions showing up across those cross-cutting themes. Are you okay to pick it up again, Rachel? Yeah.
Yeah, so we're
Well
looking at
done.
how community organisations can be supported to play an active role in determining and supporting retrofit. What we're going to do later is break into some breakout rooms to discuss a few of these. And one of the things we'll be asking is, what other questions should we be asking in this cross-cutting theme? Who else is doing really good work in this space, etc. So these are some initial questions that we've been workshopping with our different advisory boards and working group chairs. We've got another theme on heritage and whole life carbon. We're really conscious that over the last year, we haven't necessarily engaged with the topic of bio-based materials, local materials, embodied carbon as much as we probably would like to. So we think that there's something here around flipping the script. I think a lot of the time when we talk about traditional and heritage buildings, we're talking about taking a really holistic view of the way the building works, being led by building physics, thinking about local materials, materials that work really well with that fabric. And we'd like to sort of think, actually, that's a great way to approach any building that we're looking at. So, is there some work here that we could be doing around using that approach to traditional and heritage buildings to really inform the way that we retrofit at scale? So that's an exciting sort of idea for a potential project. We've been doing a lot of work on place-based approaches. This is something that came out of Working Group 5, State of the Nation. We have done some great roundtables that have been hosted in collaboration with Ashton and Dr. Donald Brown on existing place-based approaches, how they're working, what we can learn from them. And there's certainly space here for some more work. So we're looking at how could place-informed decision making be used to ensure low running costs, healthy indoor environments, ethical supply chains, a resilient grid, and all of this being achieved as part of the journey towards net zero? Is there a relationship between this and the net zero carbon building standard for retrofit? There's a few more questions in that box that we'll get into when we come on to that cross-cutting theme. I don't know if you want to explore the next one, Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. So fine, outcomes and impact. If you don't mind zooming out a little bit, Rachel, thank you. So if we can go into the blue one. So this was a question that has come up about how can multi-source funding, or people might understand that as blended finance or multi-capital accounting. There's a range of different sort of lenses looking at this question of like beyond the monetary value of things. How can multi-source funding of the full range of retrofit benefits be enabled, and how should we ensure finance flows in a way that is just, fair, and supports the right actions for the right outcomes? So as you will have heard, we described our measuring outcomes and impact evaluation project, but there could be other projects that we might want to look into here with this. We've obviously called out that working group 4 on finance and working group 5 on delivery are a key part of that. But we know that, again, it matters elsewhere as well. When we're talking about data metrics, when we're talking about skills, what is it that we're really needing to start defining as the co-benefits or new core benefits of retrofit? So we've already got some projects on with that, but where else might it show up, and what else might you know about that's happening when it comes to that? And the last one is procurement. Now, procurement has come up lots of times to the point where it warranted us enough to think about, hey, should we actually be drawing this out as a separate theme, as a separate working group? What should it be? And it naturally feels like it is a cross working group theme. So what we've got here is how can retrofit SMEs be best supported to build confidence, capacity and skill, and what needs to change in procurement to enable SME growth? What that often talks to really about is that you will hear of some of the government funded schemes being quite difficult for SMEs to get a part of and able to be able to deliver things. And sometimes that can mean that you end up with a migration of skills happening across the country, and it just doesn't necessarily make logical or logistical sense for that to happen. So if procurement holds the key to some of that, what might need to change in procurement to enable better access for SMEs to be part of that question? There's another question that emerged, which was How can procurement better deliver genuine social value, enable community wealth building, and create good quality local skilled jobs? Again, we think the really important part of that is that you will see that social value has to be naturally built into contracting, but sometimes there is evidence that suggests that that can be lip service at worst, and that's really not bringing that value in. So how do we ensure that there is really genuine social value being created through these opportunities? Because that's all part of the messaging, it's all part of the narrative and part of the picture around how we're going to see this, retrofit being locally delivered. And that's what's really
Mm.
keen. We're really, really keen to get under the skin of procurement.
And I think it's probably worth saying that, we're aware that there are great examples in each of these different cross-cutting themes of people already innovating in the space. We're aware of people doing interesting things in procurement where the jobs created are really built into the contracts. We're aware of some great community retrofit projects, area-based and place-based approaches. And what we'd like to discuss with you is what might we not be aware of, who should we connect with, and how can we sort of build on and support the great work that's already happening in the sector. So we're going to come back to this Miro, but in breakout rooms. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint and we're going to put up a question.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a poll. So the poll is going to be which cross-cutting themes should the NRH
Yeah.
prioritize?
What
And
we
while
mean there is the 6 groups. Just, we're not asking you to remember all of the questions, of which
no,
there were many, just those 6 orange lozenges, the cross-cutting themes. In your view, from your perspective, which of those are the ones that we should prioritize?
and I'm going to launch the poll now.
So if you can select your preference, your priority there, and then the top 3 will be the themes of the working group sessions that we will launch shortly, and spend probably 20-25 minutes in those breakout rooms having a discussion around that, where we will then encourage your use of the Miro board for those of you who are feeling very enthusiastic a few minutes
Oh,
ago.
this is tricky. It's really close. We're going to need
It is.
as many people as possible to vote on this because it is looking very close.
It is. It is.
Okay, we've
It's
had,
looking like
oh, it's still coming through.
EPs and measuring outcomes and community retrofit. Those are the ones that are looking high. We have almost got 90% of people participating in this. So we'll give it another, should we give
I
it
think
another
when we
15
get to
seconds?
125, oh, there we go.
All right, let's end the poll there.
Okay.
So it looks like Ben White, who's very fastidiously creating working groups in the background. We've got the EPCs and minimum energy efficiency standards. We've got community retrofit, and we've got financing outcomes and impact. It doesn't mean, of course, that the others aren't important to us. As you've seen, we will be continuing activity on that, but we want to just have some focused conversation with you all today. So what's going to happen is that Rachel is going to take one working group or one breakout room. I'm going to take another, and Cara Holmes is going to take the third. And you can self-select and join a breakout room. Don't worry if it doesn't become immediately apparent to you how to do that. It should come up. You can assign, I think you can assign your,
And
going.
Cara, do you want to do minimum energy efficiency standards?
I can do. I don't mind.
Or would you prefer to do community retrofit?
Either or. I'm easy.
Sarah, do you want to do community or do you want to do outcomes and impact?
I'm going to jump into community.
Okay, I'll do outcomes and financing outcomes and impact. Cara, you
Okay.
do MEs.
So right down at the bottom of that list where you've all seen your names coming up as not joined, scroll the way down to the bottom and you'll see the 3 groups, and you can then click join, and you will bring yourself into that group. So scroll down where it says breakout rooms in progress and join your preferred room. And we will see you back out here
Sorry,
in about 20 minutes.
could you just explain where that is on the screen?
Yeah, so at
I'm
the
looking at the
bottom,
chat and everything, and I can't see it anywhere.
so at the bottom of the screen, can you see you've got some buttons? There's one that says participants, one that
Oh,
says
yes,
chat.
yes,
There might
yes.
be one that says breakout rooms. If not,
Not on my screen, no.
press the 3 dots that says more.
Mhm.
And then you should see breakout rooms within that.
I do indeed. Thank you.
There you go. Yeah,
Right.
hopefully you should all get
Glad
that.
it worked. Right, I'm going to go and join my growing group if I can hit the button in time.
Oh my God, I can't.
I can't do it
I
either.
can't.
Right, I'm going to try
There
and
we
join.
go.
Right, yes.
So sorry, would you mind just saying where the entry to the groups are again?
Oh yeah. So if
there
it's
it is.
not in the
Right.
bottom
Okay.
bar for you, it should be on the three dots where it says more. Can you see that?
Oh yeah, got it. Cheers.
Yeah, and then breakout rooms. Great.
I had
Thanks so
exactly
much.
the same thing, but it didn't allow me to actually join the breakout room.
Okay, but did it give you a message when
Right.
you weren't able to
think-
join, or?
I think, are we in breakout rooms now? I hope.
Kara, you're in the main room.
So where I'm sure that I clicked it. Like, what happened?
Let me see if I can assign you on
Yeah, I tried to click it. Hang on.
Yeah,
Car
same
rooms.
with me. I can see all the choices of the three groups, but
Yeah.
I'm
Okay,
clicking
join.
on join and it's not allowing.
Okay, so Kara, which one are you going?
hang
attempting to go
on.
to?
I think I've got it now. I had to press it like really hard for some reason. I don't know.
Okay, all right, cool.
I was EPCs. No,
Yeah.
I'm not going. I'm not going anywhere. You might need to move me.
Okay, let's try. So Keith, which one was it you were trying to go to? Oh.
Thanks.
Looks like they've been able to get to where they need to. I can't see them in this room anymore.
Can you put me into the EPC room, please?
Yes, yeah, can do.
Are you staying here, Ben? Or are you?
Yeah, I'll be here just to get people back if needed.
Yeah. Okay. I might dip into one
Mhm.
and check all okay. Thank you we were just, Paul, your timing was excellent on your last comment that you got it in there in the 30 seconds that we had left. And Jason, a request to you to message me because I didn't get to your second comment. But we had a really great conversation in hours, which we could have done with another. Oh, we were only getting started, really. Don't know about you, Rachel and Cara.
Yeah, really interesting discussion. Lots of good things, and I think we could have spidered off in many different directions, actually. But yeah, really, really great discussion.
So shall we just spend like two to 3 minutes, you, me, and Cara, just sort of reflecting back some of the things that we talked about, and then just come to the last slide I think that we had, and maybe just to reassure people that this is just the beginning of the conversations that started today.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, would you like to go first?
Sure, I'm more than likely going to miss some bits, but we'll definitely look back at all the notes in the Miro board. But one of the things that was really interesting, we were talking about the fact that, and it often comes back to this, is that when we're talking about finance, that needs de-risking. So a de-risking mechanism that allows finance to know that the outcomes that are being targeted are going to be delivered. We heard from Michelle from Talana about a insurance product that they have to sort of guarantee the performance outcomes based on the retrofit to allow that finance to then engage, which I think was really interesting, links back to our question on quality assurance that's being looked at in working group 1. We also thought that was really critical as well for the householder, and the way I sort of put it is that they almost need the business case as well to be able to say these are the outcomes that you're going to get, and this is the sort of trust that you can have that you will be delivered this benefit. Alongside obviously that more sort of hearts and minds piece, we had one of our participants, Sarah Cole, saying, you know, we need to sort of, yes, the economic side is really important and how you might be able to pay back, but it's not just an economic payback, it's much more about your quality of life. And we talked a bit about, you know, when you replace your kitchen, you don't expect it to pay back, but it really improves the way that you feel living in your home. So trying to combine some of these things together. We heard from Antoine from Hacked saying, you know, this is going to be about blending a lot of things, but some of them are quite new, some of them are emerging, talking about energy companies and purchase power agreements, talking about monthly subscriptions, talking about obviously the carbon credits model. It's maybe there's a role for sort of making apparent what is existing and emerging out there and figuring out how that can be pieced together. We had a really interesting point about Denmark and how they have a solution. We'll talk about a funeral plan for your boiler, where if your boiler breaks down in Denmark, you can get a free temporary boiler from the government that allows you to keep heating your home until you're ready to connect to a decentralized system or an air source heat pump, and then that gets uninstalled and installed in someone else's home. So you've got that sort of time and space to sort of make a plan within a fixed period to incentivize you to make change. We also talked about the need to really think about how social housing or sort of mixed tenure blocks are funded and delivered. We know we've heard about issues with the mixed tenure blocks in Edinburgh, but also some of the same sort of issues happening in London and elsewhere, where the cost that is being imposed on owner occupiers in predominantly social housing blocks are really, really high and are sometimes leading to people losing their homes. So some work around like how those mixed tenure blocks are sort of funded and delivered is probably worthwhile. And yeah, we also heard from some of the work that Cambridge Building Society has been doing and thinking about maybe transferring some unused apprenticeship levy to support other people to upskill. Citizens Advice has just done some great research on what outcomes are really important to householders that we'll definitely take a look at, and sort of really making sure that we're able to evidence that that's important to them, and how we might need to combine grants and loans together to sort of target that missing middle that we've talked about before. So yeah, that was a bit of a snapshot of a few bits and pieces, but yeah, thanks so much everyone.
Yeah, some of those finance bits emerged slightly just as you were talking about that sort of the criteria for accessing funding and the blending of different ways through, and that middle and that bit in the middle that's often missed. So I won't go back over that. But some things that did come up for us was straight out the bat, no surprise, a bit of a definition around what we mean by community retrofit. So I think we've got some working definitions around the projects that we've got on. And then I think for us, we'll be keen to share what we mean and what we define that as is the way has been with lots of our other projects, including archetypes, getting down into the detail of what we mean by those things. We talked a little bit about some of the, I suppose, some of the opportunities and maybe gaps or weak spots in community organising, which might be around the stability of groups, the inherent skill sets that might sit with just one person. And this, I suppose, really speaks back to the fact that there really is no resource funding for or revenue funding, I should say, for kind of community and civic led groups often in this space. So being able to maintain and hold on to those sorts of skill sets is really, really important, but also at risk. So I think that was really useful for us to discuss. We started to pull out some of the places and types of infrastructural support that might be needed. So mentoring is obviously one, and that's what we want to leverage our network here in the National Retrofit Hub to try and enable some of that skills that everybody has here and their lived experiences to sort of help with some of that capacity gap or shortfall that might exist in community groups. We talked about, I think, if I understood this correctly, but it's about the value of local and visible demonstrable work. And that's not just like the one show home from a local authority, but actually a program of upskilling, getting your hands on a building, understanding what it might be to use different materials or trades or applications, and then that also addressing some skills gaps that might go on. So how do you get that little bit? And of course, that was connected to procurement, which came up as well. A big part of the conversation also touched on QA, unsurprisingly. So a little bit around how do you ensure that community-led initiatives have the protections of QA where necessary, if they're not necessarily coming through, say, something that might be accredited. So I think QA is going to be something that really needs to be handled in a range of different pathways. So clarity through how that's secured and allowed to protect work and people. And there was some other really interesting bits and pieces as well that I want to follow up on. But yeah, thanks to everybody in our group. And I have more notes here than I have on the Miro board. I couldn't use both at the same time. I don't know if Cara has managed to rejoin the chat. Are you there?
I'm back. Yeah, so sorry to everyone in my group because our conversation was really exciting and then I struggled. So that slowed us down a little bit. I did not attempt to use the Miro, so I just have notes. But we talked about actually all the different use cases of EPCs and how that can make things, I mean, it can be good and there's a lot of opportunities there, but it can also make things challenging. So we talked about like how actually we need to emphasize all those different use cases to government and show that we're not disagreeing, we're just highlighting different perspectives. I think it's also come up in the chat in this room as well. We talked about the freeholder dilemma and especially around flats and things like that. So like where does responsibility lie? How do we work out things? Like who has to then take the measures? If like you live on the top floor flat, are you the only one that's got to do insulation and everyone else just gets a benefit from it? So we talked about that that kind of tension there and how to work that out. We talked also about monitoring and like actually having data to sort of rather than predicted data, having actual data and how to facilitate that and how that would work. Whilst also actually keeping EPCs cost effective, because recognizing that actually as kind of a mandatory practice, they do need to be accessible to people, they do need to still be straightforward. So we talked a little bit about like encouraging best practice and maybe allowing you to add in actual information to supplement the EPC. Yeah, then like how we can, I think the monitoring thing actually was quite a big conversation. I think that was like, how do we really give people the information that they need and also show that it's achieving these other outcomes and these other benefits, because it's not just about cost reduction. That monitoring can show you other things as well about like risk of damp and mold and stuff like that. So I think some of that did seep out into some of the other conversations that probably you were having. We did talk a little bit about benefits, and then I think we talked a tiny bit about MEES at the end and about like the financial support, I suppose, that landlords will need to make these changes. And just making sure that that's all in place. to facilitate them and to make sure that they can make those works actually happen. So yeah, that was the kind of gist of our conversation. But yeah, touched on a few of the other co-benefits or like the other things that we didn't actually get to talk about. So I think we've got to cover them anyway.
Great.
Thanks so much, Cara. I might just share my screen for the last few slides. So
before we talk about that, one last thing to say to everybody who's on this call, we will obviously feedback after today, and we will also share how you can get involved in some of these cross-cutting themes, because I know we just really scratched the surface. So we will follow up with how you can get involved. Feel free to contact us if you didn't get a chance to make your point or say what you wanted to say. Drop us a line, you know where to find us. So there will be ways to keep the sort of informal engagement running. But we just wanted to say that obviously, like, in order to keep the lights on and keep us moving, we also need the support of our partners and sponsors beyond and on top of the huge wealth of knowledge that you support us with by being part of our network.
yeah, amazing. And yeah, a really good point, Sarah, that this is just the beginning of some of those cross-cutting themes, and there'll be task and finish groups set up within them that will let you know how to join. But yeah, obviously, we're a non-profit organisation that massively relies on the support of our sponsors and partners to do the work that we do. If you're from an organisation that feels like you'd like to get more involved in the National Retrofit Hub, join our advisory panel and support some of this work. There are lots of opportunities there. We've got a few different tiers of sponsorship that are available to make that accessible to people, from our sort of sponsor level, which is all about coming into our advisory panel, making sure that you're connected through our newsletter, showcasing the work that you're doing, bringing in your resources on our website, up to the sort of resource sponsor level that really help us to make sure that we can deliver some of this project work specifically, and then up to the program sponsorship, which is looking at sort of supporting those sort of much larger research programs. There's lots of different opportunities available. We're hosting a specific webinar on that on the 14th of April. So if someone from your organization, potentially your marketing, your comms, your research, your advocacy teams might like to come along to that, please do suggest it to them, because it's a great way to get more involved in what we're doing. And yeah, just really looking forward to having more of you engage with some of these new topics, because there's a lot of excellent insights that were already coming out of those discussions. So we want to make sure to continue them. Thank you very much. And I think that's everything. And we're bang on 2 o'clock.
Yes, it is. Thank you, everybody, for your contributions. As ever, we really greatly appreciate you, and do keep in touch with us. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.